Dyatlov's group was due back by February 12. They never arrived. Search parties couldn't move in the weather. It took until February 26 before a team following old ski tracks found the tent on Kholat Syakhl, a name that, in hindsight, feels less like coincidence and more like a warning. The Dyatlov Pass, 9 hikers, 1 tent cut from the inside. 9 experienced hikers. 1 tent, cut open from the inside. No survivors. No explanation. This is the Dyatlov Pass, and 60 years of investigation have only made it stranger. But the silence was a lie. The tent, when finally discovered weeks later, lay half-buried, its peak collapsed, an axe abandoned nearby. And etched into its side, a massive, jagged tear, clearly made from within. The 9 experienced hikers who had pitched it that evening were gone. Why they fled their only refuge, out into a freezing tempest, abandoning warmth and supplies, and what truly happened to them, remains, to this day, an impenetrable enigma. It was January 1959. Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student, led a group of 8 other skilled cross-country skiers on an ambitious expedition to Otorten Mountain in the northern Urals. This was no amateur outing. The group, comprising fellow students and experienced mountaineers, aimed for a Category 3 trek, the most difficult classification. They were prepared, equipped, and intimately familiar with the unforgiving Russian wilderness. Their journey began with optimism, captured in photographs showing smiling faces, dense pine forests, and challenging, but conquerable, terrain. On February 1, they established their final camp on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl, Dead Mountain in the local Monsi language, just 10 miles from their objective. They set up their large, communal tent on a flat section of snow, digging a shallow trench to secure it against the inevitable winds. Inside, they shared a meal, recounted the day's progress, and settled in for the night, unaware it would be their last. When Dyatlov's group failed to report back by February 12, the alarm bells began to ring. Initial searches, hindered by brutal weather, proved fruitless. It wasn't until February 26 that a search party, following faint ski tracks, located the tattered remains of the tent on Kholat Syakhl. The scene immediately defied explanation. Clothes, boots, food, and even a camera were left behind inside. The tent fabric was ripped, not by an animal from the outside, but by multiple desperate slashes from the interior, as if someone had frantically cut their way out. Following a trail of footprints, some bare or in socks, others shod in a single boot, investigators descended downhill for about 500 meters. There, beneath a large cedar tree, the first 2 bodies were found. Yuri Krivonyshenko and Yuri Doroshenko, clad only in underwear and socks, were huddled near the embers of a small, pathetic fire. Their hands were scraped and bruised, as though they'd climbed the cedar's branches in a futile search for something. Their bodies showed no signs of external struggle, yet the deep violet hue of their skin hinted at extreme hypothermia. Further up the slope, closer to the tent, the bodies of Igor Dyatlov, Zinaida Kolmogorova, and Rustam Slobodin were discovered, spread out at intervals, as if they had been trying to crawl back to the abandoned shelter. Dyatlov was found clutching a small branch, Kolmogorova with defensive injuries, and Slobodin with a fractured skull. The initial evidence painted a picture of a sudden, terrifying flight into the night, but the reason for such a panicked escape remained utterly obscure. Here is what I find most telling about the first 5 bodies: they were not scattered randomly. Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin were found in a line heading back toward the tent, as if whatever drove them out, they had second thoughts and tried to return. They just didn't make it. That is not blind panic. That is a group that encountered something, reconsidered, and then lost. The fractured skull of Slobodin was perplexing. It was not a fatal blow, but an injury sustained perhaps in a fall, or from some unknown blunt force. The investigation was paused, the weather too severe for further recovery. It would take another 2 months for the remaining bodies to be found. In May, as the snow began to melt, the final 4 hikers were located in a ravine, buried under 4 meters of snow, 75 meters further down from the cedar tree, almost a mile from the tent. This discovery amplified the horror and pushed the case into the realm of the truly inexplicable. Ludmila Dubinina, Semyon Zolotaryov, Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles, and Alexander Kolevatov presented a far grimmer picture than their companions. Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles had a severe skull fracture, similar to Slobodin's but much more extensive. Alexander Kolevatov showed signs of severe internal trauma, including a fractured rib cage. But it was Ludmila Dubinina and Semyon Zolotaryov who bore the most disturbing injuries. Dubinina was found without her tongue, eyes, and parts of her lips, her body displaying multiple broken ribs. Zolotaryov also had multiple fractured ribs. Crucially, there were no external wounds corresponding to these massive internal injuries. It was as if they had been subjected to immense pressure, a force comparable to a car crash, yet had fallen from no height, been hit by no visible object. Some of their clothing, tested later, showed traces of radiation. The forensic examination of all 9 bodies revealed a chilling paradox. Several had undressed in the freezing temperatures, a phenomenon known as paradoxical undressing, often associated with the final stages of hypothermia, where victims inexplicably feel hot. Yet, the organized abandonment of the tent, the cut from the inside, and the severe, inexplicable injuries on some of the hikers suggested something far more complex than simple hypothermia. The official Soviet inquiry concluded only that the hikers had died from a compelling unknown force. The area was immediately closed to the public for years, fueling rampant speculation. The families of the victims were left without answers, only the horrifying details of their loved ones' final moments. The strange injuries, the radiation, the unexplained flight from safety, these facts were locked away in classified files, denying closure and breeding a persistent climate of suspicion and fear. The human cost extended beyond the immediate tragedy. It became a symbol of a deep-seated governmental secrecy, where official narratives often clashed with the unsettling reality. What kind of force could leave such a scene of devastation, yet no discernible culprit? What could drive 9 experienced, well-equipped hikers to such a desperate, chaotic end? The Soviet investigation closed the case in May 1959 with a single phrase: the hikers died due to an unknown compelling force. That is not a conclusion. That is an admission. And what makes this case genuinely different from most historical mysteries is that the Soviet state, a government with every incentive to manufacture a tidy answer, apparently could not fabricate a better one. In the years that followed, countless theories emerged, each attempting to stitch together the disparate, horrifying pieces of evidence. Early theories ranged from an attack by the indigenous Montsi people, quickly debunked by their peaceful nature and lack of motive, to encounters with wild animals, which couldn't account for the internal injuries or the tent's peculiar damage. Speculation also included military tests gone wrong, perhaps a secret weapon or a fallout of a missile test, which might explain the radiation, but not the specific trauma or the flight from the tent. More outlandish hypotheses involving UFOs or even a Yeti-like creature, while captivating, lack any scientific grounding. In recent years, more rigorous scientific analyses have focused on environmental explanations. The most compelling modern theory revolves around a rare type of avalanche, a slab avalanche. Proponents suggest that a delayed, heavy slab of snow could have slid down the slope, hitting the tent with immense force. This could explain the severe internal injuries without external marks, mimicking a car crash, and the initial panic that led the hikers to cut their way out of the compromised tent. The paradoxical undressing would then be a consequence of hypothermia setting in after their escape. A 2021 study by the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology added further weight, using computer simulations to demonstrate how such an avalanche could occur on a relatively shallow slope. The avalanche theory is the best scientific answer we have, and it still doesn't fit cleanly. If a slab of snow hit the tent with car crash force, why did 9 people who survived the impact then walk, calmly enough to leave distinct footprints, 500 meters down into a ravine? Avalanche survivors run away from the slope. These hikers walked down into one. The missing soft tissue on Dubinina is most likely post-mortem decomposition and animal activity in the waterlogged ravine. Forensic pathologists are fairly settled on that. The radiation traces on some clothing are low-level and may predate the trip entirely, given Krivonischenko worked at a nuclear facility. These are answerable details. The walking is not. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains a potent symbol of nature's indifference and humanity's vulnerability to the truly unknown. It is a story where the facts refuse to coalesce into a single, satisfying truth. Every piece of evidence, every theory, only serves to underscore the profound strangeness of that night. The tragedy continues to inspire documentaries, books, and intense online discussion, a testament to our enduring need to find order in chaos, even when confronted with an event that seems to defy all reason. The 9 hikers of Dyatlov Pass stepped into the unknown, and in doing so, created one of history's most compelling and chilling cold cases. 9 people walked into the Ural Mountains in January 1959. We know what they brought. We know where they camped. We know none of them came back. What we do not know, what nobody has ever satisfactorily explained, is what made them cut open their tent in the middle of the night and walk out into -30 degrees without their boots. If you want more of history's cases that refuse to close, subscribe to ChaMedia. New episode every week.